I want to tell you a story about a $100 bill. But first, this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion, at the concluding passages, which is the last words we're going to read in the Torah during this Jewish calendar year, because this coming Sunday night is Rosh Hashanah, is God's final message to us for the new year. The last message of this year and the message to welcome the new year is two very powerful words. God says, I've placed before you today life and goodness on the one hand, Chaim v'etatov, and on the other hand, et hamavet v'etara, death and evil. And then God says two words, Ubacharta b'chaim, you shall choose life. Now as Jews, we always choose life. We always say l'chaim. But what does it mean when God says you have a choice? You could choose death and evil or life and goodness. Doesn't everyone want life? Why does God have to instruct us to choose life? And the answer is perhaps that the word Chaim in life in Hebrew is plural, because there's the physical dimension and the spiritual dimension to life. Yes, everyone wants physical life and longevity. We do whatever we can to prolong our lives. But the Torah is saying that you have to choose life, not just the physical, but the spiritual life. And God's saying to us that life is synonymous with goodness. The more goodness we infuse our lives with, the more connection to each other, to the Torah, to the mitzvos, to following God's instructions for a healthy life, not just physically but spiritually, the more life we imbue ourselves with. And therefore God's message to us for the new year is choose a life that's meaningful, that's deep, that's spiritual, not just a physical existence. Every day infuse your day with Torah and with good deeds. There's a story told about a professor who once held up a $100 bill to the students and said, how much is this worth? $100. He said, what's if I take the $100 bill and I crumple it up? How much is it worth now? And they said, it's still worth $100. He said, what's if I take it and I stomp on it and I rub it into the ground? How much is it worth now? And they said, it's still worth $100. He said, what's if I throw it in the garbage can? How much is it worth in the garbage can? They say it's still worth $100. And he said, you know why that is so? He said, because it's not the piece of paper that matters. It's what this piece of paper represents. This piece of paper, no matter if it's crumpled or dirty or in the garbage can, represents $100 in the U.S. Treasury in gold that can never be touched, can never be tainted, and therefore never loses its intrinsic value. He says the same thing with every one of us. Let us remember that we have a physical existence, and sometimes that physical existence is crumpled and damaged and even feels dirty or unclean, or sometimes it feels like it was tossed away in the garbage can. But if you know that your true value is your soul, your spiritual, godly self, then you never lose your self-worth, and you always know that no matter what happens to you in life, you have not lost any of your value. And that's why the word Chaim, which God says, choose life, the middle two letters of the word Chaim is Yud and Yud, which spells God's name. Live a life that is imbued with your relationship to God and godliness and the sanctity of every human being. Fill your life with spirituality, with goodness and kindness and meaningful connection to one another. And then God says, you will have chosen a true life, a life filled with depth and with meaning. May we all be blessed with the blessing of Chaim Tovim, good life in the coming year, both physically and spiritually. Have a wonderful day.